So, sir, I think we can start now. So, good afternoon, one and all present here, all the participants. So, we have with us Dr. Priyankoo Sharma, who is a professor and head of Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. He is a linguistic specializing in phonetics and phonology with focus on the especially on the Northeast Indian and Tibeto-Burman languages. His research integrates speech science with language technology, including speech perception, speech recognition, and computational linguistics, particularly for the low research language. I think Priyanku sir, I am also one of the alumni of Jurat Engineering College.
Oh,
So I
okay.
passed out in 1997 from Jurat Engineering College, and currently I am working in KIT for the last 23 years, where we have one sister institute is there, like that one is your Kish University, where 64 different tribal languages students are studying. The number is also around 30, around 40,000 number of students are studying totally free. And along with that one also, we have around 2000 plus African foreign students are there from 70 countries. So most of the students are from African continent. So as you know, in African, so many low resource languages are available like your Amharic, Somali, Swahili, many other local languages also available. So that we can use the students or we can include the students, those who can work with us and we can have a good speech repertory in which our all the professors from IIT they can work because in high level languages many work has already been done. So I am also focusing on that one. So definitely from my side I can help you to prepare the data set because you know many things say in terms of your linguistic you can help me on that one, so we can have some collaborative work in future. So now sir, session is yours. We can start, sir.
Thank you, Professor Dash, for the introduction and then letting me know about the background. And also, I'm very excited to know that there are quite a few students, research scholars, possibly from Africa, because we know so less about Africa, but the diversity is so huge in Africa, and we really want to know more about it. So it will be very nice to keep in touch with many of you even after the talk. Even the talk fails, I hope that we'll be able to talk. So I'll start with my talk today. So thanks for the invitation to give this talk here. And my talk is a very basic talk. It's fundamentals of speech production, and I'll go into a little bit of acoustics and little bit into instrumentation as we start talking, going through the slides. So the talk is organized in this manner. First, I'll go for the basics of speech production, then a little bit of basics of speech acoustics of what we actually analyze in terms of speech analysis and speech, let's say, modeling, etc. Then I'll talk a little bit about speech data collection and about other instrumentations, such as usually in terms of speech, when we talk about the instrumentation, we know about microphones, but apart from microphones, there are other devices with which we can get features of speech, which I'll talk about in other instrumentations. And then finally, I'll talk about the challenges, and I'll conclude my talk there. So I'm expecting to conclude this talk by about 1:20 p.m. so that we have enough time for questions. Maybe a little bit early, maybe 1:15, so that we have at least 15 minutes for interaction and questions. And I hope my voice is clear and you're able to hear me properly. If it is so, then please just let me know. I mean, just put a thumbs up or something so that I know that all of you can hear me well. Okay, thank you. That's wonderful. I got it. Yeah, wonderful. Thanks. And yeah, I can see too many thumbs up now. Okay. So I will go to the basics of speech production, the first part that I'm planning to talk about in today's talk. And I'm focusing on basically two major areas. One is the vocal cords, and the other is the velum. So if you don't know about this parts, or if you don't know about these terms, so don't worry at this point of time. As we go on, probably we'll be more clear about this term. So as of now, if you have not heard about these terms, please don't panic. As you probably know, the speech production is something very normal to us. It is so normal that we never think about like the complexity that is involved in speech production. But if you look into it as a system, it's a very complex system. And that is the reason why, for a long time, we were not able to reproduce speech electronically, or able to hear or recognize speech electronically for a long time, because it's such a complex system with so many variables. If you look into the basics of speech production, then we have to go to the human anatomy and a little bit understand what is happening in the human anatomy. And I'll pay more attention to two parts of the human anatomy, while talking about speech as we go on. So the first thing that happens in the speech production is that if you pay your attention to the diagram on the right, what happens is that we basically formulate our thoughts about what to speak. So when I'm speaking the word hello right now, so I'm basically sending the idea of the word hello, creating the idea of the word hello in my brain. And then my brain analyzes that that means that there has to be a ha, a, la, o. All these four different sounds have to be there for to produce the hello. So as a result of that, what happens is that the brain sends an electric impulse to our different, specifically our motor cortex, basically sends an impulse to our articulators. What are the articulators? The articulators can be your tongue, lips, the jaw movement. All these are helping you in the articulation of different sounds. And one of the major part is, as I said, the vocal cords, which is a pair of muscles here, about which we'll talk about in a while. So basically, brain triggers the speech production, and what it does is that it sends a few electric impulses to different muscles around our vocal tract area, which is near, which is essentially our head. And then there are several things that keep on following one after another. For example, the first thing after you send the signal, what happens is that we all know that speech needs some sort of energy. So where would the energy come? So if you look into the bottom of the figure now, where the arrow is, we have the diaphragm, which basically inflates and deflates, and then makes our lungs to expand, or to compress, so that we can exhale and inhale air. So this is the first part of speech production, right? So what is happening is that the first thing that is happening is the creation of the airstream, as we call it, from the lungs. So this airstream is basically you are compressing air in your lungs, and then and then you are exhaling it, so that it becomes the energy as it goes on to somebody's mic is on, so maybe I'll try to
Yes, sir, I am doing it.
uh,
You just continue. Let me
okay,
unmute.
yeah, okay. So as I said, so as a result of the lungs basically deflates and sends a stream of air out, and then that stream of air basically becomes the energy source of energy for all the sounds that we hear. In other words, if I have less air in my lungs, then I'll produce things which are at a very low voice, like something like this. And if I have have to shout, then I have to send in more air from the lungs, yeah, as you can understand by now. Uh, so this is what happens in the first stage, that the lungs basically send out air streams so that the sound initiation happens, and the energy for the sound basically is available. So that is the lungs part. And then the third thing that happens is that, then as you can see in the third longer arrow here, what is happening is that there is a pair of muscles called the vocal cords, about which we'll go much more in detail in the following slides. These muscles, now what happen is that either there can be two configurations more or less of keeping these muscles. You can either keep them open, or you can keep them closed. Now, if you keep them closed, what happens is that these muscles vibrate, because the lungs is now pushing the air out, and so these muscles basically try to open. But many of us who have learned a little bit of science in our background, we know that there is a very interesting principle called Bernoulli's principle. And according to Bernoulli's principle, what happens is that when that kind of flow is displaced, right? Maybe be it air or liquid. What happens is that it creates a low pressure area on the bottom. So basically, because of which the vocal cords again close. Now again, another again pressure increases, it opens, closes. So this process, basically, if the vocal cords are closed, that continues several times in a second. And I'll talk to you about it in detail in a later one of the later slides, because in order to be audible, we need to have this opening and closing of the vocal cords to happen at least 20 times, which we'll talk about in the following slides. So then the next process that happens is that there is one part here, as you can see. Maybe I'll just yeah, I'll zoom it in. There is this part here which is called the velum, as you can see, and this is kind of a gate which is closed or open in towards the mouth or towards the nose. So what happens is that if the velum goes down, then the air passes through the nose. If the velum goes up, then it basically closes the nose side and the air comes out from the mouth. So as you probably know by now, that most of the sounds that we produce are by only mouth, like a, e, u, e, o, etc., like pa, ba, etc. But then there are a series of sounds you already know, which are produced with the nasal airflow, where the velum goes down and the air comes out from the nose, such as ma sound, such as na sound, or such as na sound, etc. So basically, the velum rises or lowers. If it rises, then we produce the oral sounds. If it lowers, then the air goes out from the nose, and then we produce the nasal sounds. Apart from that, after that, there is something else happens. What happens is that then like say then it is up to your exactly this area after the vocal cords area. In this area, what you have is the tongue, and you have the whole jaw, which can go up and down. The tongue can go up and down, and depending on that, the quality of the sound differs. For example, when you're doing an ah sound, your tongue goes down, your jaw opens, and you make an ah. But if you raise the same with the same position, ah, producing ah, if you raise this, your jaw and the tongue, I slowly you start producing the e sound. So basically, after that, after vocal cord vibration, the velum, it is basically taken care of by the tongue and the different parts of the mouth in the production of the sounds, which we call the articulators. For example, if I make a sound like pa, I have to get the lips close together. But if I want to get a sound like fa, then there is a small gap in the lips, and then the air goes out. So this is what happens in the last stage. and then following that, we start hearing the sound. So if we do an action replay now, the one we see is that it goes somewhat like this. First brain, then diaphragm basically deflates, and then the lungs basically pump out air to make the vocal cords vibrate, or sometimes they don't, and then the velum rises or lowers, and finally articulation follows. So these are basically the stages of speech production in a basic sense. At the same time, when I'm talking about these things, I would also like to know if you have any questions. So if you have any questions after, let's say, the next break will be at 12:30 p.m. At 12:30 p.m., I'll stop for 1 minute, and then if you have a question, I'll be happy to take the question at that point of time. Okay, so these are the two particular areas that I'm going to concentrate today. One is the vocal cord vibration, and the next one is the raising and lowering of the velum, because I think these two have very important implications in many of the studies that we do, or many of the studies you guys will do in your own work. So the first part, the vocal cords, and if you look into the vocal cords, they are actually, for men, it is behind this Adam's apple. I mean, Adam's apple is not that pronounced for females, so that's why I'm saying that for men, it is very pronounced for men. So it is somewhere around here, right? Just behind that, and this area, the whole Adam's apple, the throat area, we call it the basically the larynx, right? And if you go inside this area, then from the top view, then you will see this is basically the whole larynx and the vocal cords that are within the larynx. Okay, so again, I'll try to make put like give you draw your attention here. So the vocal cords are somewhere around here, and if we look it from, let's say, top down, then this is what we'll see. And this is the front, and this is the back of the head. This is the front of the head, back of the head, right? So these are now what you can see is that there are lots of muscles here. As you can see, these green ones and pinkish ones are different muscles. And this particular bone which holds it, it is called the hyoid bone. Okay, so this hyoid bone, this hyoid bone is the only bone in the human body which is not attached to any other bone. So it's a very independent bone, and it is believed that about 530,000 years ago, humans developed this particular bone, and that is when humans started to vocalize. First, probably some sort of human-like voices without any meanings, but later that is how language was constructed. Okay, so now what is happening here is that there are two sets of muscles here, right? um, so to give you a more better view, so it is somewhere around here. That is what we are talking about. And again, coming back to this is what the muscles basically look like. And see, the thing is that until and unless you understand, you clear this part, uh, none of your speech related activities will be successful. So I really hope that all of you, all our speech scientists or people who are interested in signal processing, speech, etc., you pay attention to this, and then you try to understand this working of these the vocal cords. So vocal cords, have two sets of. So the larynx itself, this whole area, has two sets of muscles. One are called intrinsic muscles, which are inside, and they're outside also. In this area, outside area also, there are some extrinsic muscles, and these muscles are important because that can lower or raise the larynx. So as you probably know, while we are gulping water down, chugging water down, we have to actually move it up and down so that our food and the liquids go down into our system. So that is what is done by extrinsic one, not with the intrinsic. But the intrinsic muscle, which are inside, that's why I call intrinsic. Extrinsic are outside. used for swallowing and maybe breathing, etc. Right, and there is a, like, when you're using these muscles, they are actually dispersed about 10 to 20 centimeters up and down they can go. Right. Okay, so now intrinsic muscles is what we are interested in, these muscles, right? And in intrinsic, again, we have two types of muscles. One is the respiratory muscles, the other is the phonatory muscles. Respiratory muscles, by now you probably have understood that it is used for respiration or for breathing. And phonatory are the ones that we are interested in because they're used in the production of speech. So the respiratory muscles are, as you can see here, the posterior cricoarytenoid muscle somewhere, or PCA, somewhere here, are the PCA muscles. And these PCA muscles are posterior cricoarytenoid muscles. They basically help in closing and opening in this gap. As you can see, this whole vocal cord, vocal area, they have actually these two muscles, and these two muscles are in the open position. As of now, there is a gap in between. So, but that is not something like, which is desired in case of breathing, because in breathing you have to open it and close it. So this one helps in opening and closing the muscles. So the other muscles that we have here are called the phonatory muscles, and the phonatory muscles are basically two types: adductors and tensors. So adductors, you can guess from ad that they are basically like, which closes the muscles, the two muscles together, these two long green muscles, they close them together. And tensors are the one which basically pull these muscles, that they pull or they loosen the muscles, right? So I'll talk about their, functions in a minute. But before that, I also want to make something very clear here. One thing I want to make clear here is about these posterior cricoarytenoid muscles. These posterior cricoarytenoid muscles, as I said, they're useful in, breathing. It opens the airways, and in case of speaking, it also helps to close these muscles together. As you can see, these muscles are here laterally. As a result of that, they can pull and close these two muscles so that the vocal cords basically start vibrating. So basically, any speech that you are analyzing, or any graph that you see, or any waveforms that you see, is the creation of these muscles. And this is where we'll start from. So phonatory muscles are again two types: the adductor and the tensor muscles, and I'll talk about them in detail in the following slides. So adductor muscles are, again, there are, as I have said, the lateral cricoarytenoid muscles, what we call the LCA muscles, somewhere around here. These are adductors. Adductors, as you can guess, they basically pull these two muscles together and close, so that the air that is coming out from the lungs gets trapped, and these muscles are forced open and closed and open and closed, and creates a vibration, which is the basis of any speech. And I'll tell you in the following slides why this vibration is the basic for, or very important for, the speech production. Then we have something called the intra-arytenoid muscle somewhere, or IA, somewhere around here. What happens is that when the cricoarytenoid, the LCA muscles are closing this, they cannot actually, they still have a gap left here, right? And so what happens is that the intra-arytenoid muscles, they further close the gap between the two vocal cords. So they completely, tightly, they close the two muscles together. Okay. Now we come to the tensor muscles, and the tensor muscles are, again, there are quite a couple of tensor muscles. So one is that very important one is the cricothyroid muscles. So the cricothyroid muscles basically pull the vocal cords here, right? They pull it towards the downwards like this. So you can imagine what happens when you pull something down. Imagine an elastic, or a rubber band that you take and you pull it. You try to play the rubber band, it will create a high pitched sound, You loosen the rubber band, it'll create a low pitch sound. So the pitch control basically that we have, for example, when I'm doing an ta versus a ta, in the second case, what was happening is that my cricothyroid muscle was pulling the main vocal cord in such a way so that it gets extended, right? So that made me make a ta, and when I make a ta, again it basically loosens it. So that is why it is important. It gives this like a longitudinal force here, so that the muscles become longer, muscles become tighter or looser, so that you can make high pitch sounds or low pitch sounds. So in other words, if you think about like I ask you a question, did you go there today? As you can see, did it da, 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 da. The last part I'm making a high pitch sound. Did you go there today? Right. So in the question, what is happening is that the last part, this cricothyroid is pulling and your muscles get longer, you make a high pitch sound, and that makes your voice natural, right? The other one is that this thyroid muscles, these thyroid muscles help you to loosen that. They give you the opposite force here, so that the vocal cords are basically loosened, so that you can make low pitched voice. So if my voice, normal voice is like this, and if I start speaking like this, then my ta muscles are basically helping me to loosen the muscles, so that the vibration is lowered, vocal cord vibration is lowered, and you hear a much more lower voice. Now, apart from that, there is this special part of the TA muscles or the thyroidenoid muscles here, which are called the vocalis muscles. These vocalis muscles are very important because if you want to uh, maintain your pitch, for example, if I want to say in the same pitch, then these vocalis muscles basically lock the tension of the muscles at one point, right? In other words, you'd assume they're called vocalis because the singers use them extensively, because for them singer it is important to have one note and the other note, they have to sustain that one note and the other note. So in order to do that, they use the vocalis muscles to basically tune the pitch to the finest possible approximation, and also to lock at it that particular note. So you probably have seen what are the things that are happening here. We are saying that, okay, let me go back a little bit now. So we are saying that we are concerned with mostly the phonatory muscles. Phonatory muscles are two types: adductors, and adductors are the ones which closes the vocal cords. So then there is something called LCA, lateral cricoarytenoid. They try to close the muscles, but they are not fully successful. So intra-arytenoid muscles completely closes the gap. Then we have the tensors, the cricothyroid muscles, which basically pull the vocal cords, the green ones, in such a way that they become longer and produce high pitched sounds. Thyroidenoid muscles, they may basically give the opposite force than compared to like required thyroid muscles, and they basically loosen the muscles and you start producing the low pitch voice. And the vocalis muscles are basically the ones which are specialized. They basically fine tune your pitch, and they try to keep it at one particular region. Okay, so it is now 12:29. So if you have a very quick question, I'll be very happy to take a question at this point of time.
Yes, you can unmute and ask the questions if you have any. I don't think, sir. You can continue.
Okay. Okay. So as we don't have any questions, I'll go to the next part. So if you look into this closing and opening of the vocal cords, and if you look at it from sideways, then there is something another picture that you probably notice. So if you look at it from the side, this is what you'd notice, that the two pieces of vocal cords, they come together. As you can see, these parts from the side, this is what they look like. They come together then they basically get disjoint, completely open, and then again they try to, join together from the lower part of it, and then they go complete closure, and they make the complete closure in this particular stage. So as you can see, they are basically opening and closing in the whole speech production, as we have said, because this is what gives the basic vibration or the source that is required for speech production. So, as you can see, these are in discrete events where one closure happens, then the muscles open, then another closure happens, and this happens, for example, in my voice as I am talking as of now, it is probably happening about 90 times to 100 times 1 second in 1 second, and that makes my fundamental frequency to about 190 to 100 hertz. Okay, so this is what is happening there. But then if you look into this is the muscles, but the muscles are not hitting each other and not closing. What is happening is that in before in the the front part of the muscles, there is another area which are kind of much more softer. This is what is coming together and becoming basically they're basically touching each other and making the closer. And I'll give you a better look at this one. So these are basically called the vocal cords. Basically the red part that you see here are the muscles, and actually this outer part is what we call the vocal are the vocal cords. This layer, like in this particular layer, I put it in red, is called a lamina propria, or LP, and it is about 1.5 millimeter thick, and it is a very complex structure. This one is also very sensitive because it is a 1.5 thick. So as you know, when you have a cough or a cold, basically you have fluid that starts accumulating in this area. This become infected, and when this become infected, it cannot close or open properly, and you lose your voice, what we call and you cannot make the vocal cord vibrations anymore, and you sound like you're whispering, right? So this area is about 1.5 thick. They are this is also very interesting because this area, the lamina propria, the thickness increases with age. Like as you grow older, the thickness basically increases up till a point, and towards the time you grow old, it actually goes in the reverse direction. So as a result of that, the in speech, the differences that we hear in let's say young people versus old people, the hoarseness in the voice, etc., are determined by the quality of the LP or the lamina propria, right? Interesting thing is that this, as because the thickness is different, as the thickness is different, as you know, its like rate of vibration would also be affected by it. If it is less thick, it will vibrate more. If it is heavier, it will vibrate less. And as you can guess, then in case of male, this is about zero point 0.5 0.548 thick. For females, it is about 0.519 thick. So the difference is about 0.03 between male and female. And that is what gives the distinct male and female voice distinctions that we all hear. But as I said, any kind of disruption, any kind of problem, any kind of physiology in this area would result in complete difference in the vocal quality, right? And so is the case with the previous areas that I have talked about. So if you look into this, any disability that basically stops the LCA or IA to not close properly would result in voice quality that we will call pathological speech. And I can see that some of the talks in the following days are on pathological speech. They'll probably again talk about it, but I'm telling you that how important it is that these vocal cords, all the muscles work properly, so that you get proper, actually, the good voice quality. Else it will result in pathological speech, and that is a completely whole different area which we explore in our studies. Okay. uh, so when we talk about the vocal cords, so far what we have seen is that it's itself is a highly complex area, complex system altogether. And it is a functionally very highly sensitive system, because a little difference in the vocal cord pulling and pushing would completely would make a very distinct change in the voice quality. For example, like, recently I have seen some studies which have said that diabetes, like, early stages of diabetes basically like paralyzes these muscles, vocal cord muscles, to some extent, that it can be detected by voice whether the person is in the initial phases of diabetes, or not. So the healthy sugar level in the body and not healthy sugar level in the body itself has an effect on the functioning of the vocal cords. And that's why I think, like, we need to know about how the default system runs, so that if there is a variation from the default system, we can actually find out, we can have different means of finding out how much is it deviating, and if it is a pathological condition or not. So in normal speech, like what you and I speak at this point of time, this is basically vocal cords are the primary source for the speech sounds. And each time the two vocal cords, as you have seen, closes and open, it creates a burst of air. That burst of air is basically like the source of speech. And the number of such bursts that are because of the opening of the vocal cords in 1 second is the f0, or the fundamental frequency of voice. So when I'm saying fundamental frequency, I mean this, that at this point of time I'm speaking probably at 90 to 100 hertz. But if I speak like this, and if I raise my voice like that, then I'm speaking much higher, maybe 130, 140 hertz a second. And the thing that is happening there is that the vocal cord vibration is changing, and the air bursts are coming out more frequently when I make ah to ah. That is what is happening there. So now what we know is that if you correlate with, like, exactly speech sounds, what we understand is that the vowels, when we are producing all the vowels are usually, they always are associated with such bursts or such vibration of the vocal cord or fundamental frequency. So all the vowels in most of the languages that we know of are produced with the vibration of the vocal cord, which we call as voicing. Right? So it is a voiced, vowels are all voice sound because they have vocal cord vibration associated. The consonants, however, are a bit more complex, because consonants can have vocal cord vibration. Like, for example, when I'm producing a z sound, and in the z, I'm producing it with a vocal cord vibration. But when I'm producing the sister sound of z, which is sa, I'm not vibrating the vocal cords. So in that case, like, they are voiced and voiceless sounds. Okay. So now there are quite a few cases where the vocal cords may not work properly, and it would give some sort of pathological conditions, and I'm going to talk about it now. So usually, because of the vocal cord muscle weakness, or some sort of pathology, for a tumor in the, like, LP, lamina propria, or some sort of, like, lesion in those areas, would cause the voice to not come naturally. So those kind of abnormal voices, unnatural voices, are basically, that condition is called dysphonia. Another term that you probably hear most of the times is that dysarthria. And dysarthria is basically a little bit different from dysphonia, because dysphonia is very local. It is because of the vocal muscle weakness, or some sort of lesion, etc., as I said. But dysarthria is because the signal that I was talking about, which goes from the brain to the muscles, this is basically sometimes disrupted, and that disruption causes the muscles not to work properly in sync with what is being sent by the brain. So those kind of conditions are called dysarthria. And the dysarthria, one of the most important nerves that that bring these signals from brain to this area, the vocal cord area, is called the vagus nerve. If you look into the vagus nerve, so this is the yellow nerve that you probably can see here, the left vagus, right vagus, etc. As you can see, it brings the signals. These wires basically bring the signals from the brain to the larynx area where vocal cords are, and at the same time it goes to many other vital organs are also connected with that. And that is why we always traditionally in many languages we have uh, but nervousness, spoken nervousness is associated with some of the organs that having butterflies in your stomach, those kind of ideas, right? So this vagus nerve is coming there, bringing the signal from the brain to the larynx, and it brings many other pathological signals to many other vital organs of the body also. Okay. So the difference between dysphonia and dysarthria: dysphonia is local. It's only damage to the vocal muscles due to weakness, pathology, due to age, etc. Dysarthria is due to because the neural signal, the brain signal that we are talking about, is not coming down all the way to the muscle, because of which the muscles are not working properly. As a result of that, it creates pathological voice. Okay, so here I would again give you a kind of summary. So in what there are different types of dysarthria. So they are they are basically associated with these different muscles. As you can see, if it is a breathy kind of voice, when somebody speaks with breathy or nasal kind of voice, that is because of the lateral cricoarytenoid muscles, or the interarytenoid, or the other muscles cricothyroid, the like intra-arytenoid muscles are not working properly. So, and then they are becoming weak here, and in this case they become much more stronger, so they are not able to vibrate, which leads to squeaky voice. In the previous case it is more like breathy voice. And then there is something called a hypokinetic dysarthria, where the cricothyroid muscles are affected, which changes your pitch. So what happens is that the resulting pitch becomes monotonic kind of thing. Hello, I don't have any tone difference here in my voice. It's being spoken like in a very robotic voice. So these are different disorders that come out because of the muscle inactivity that I showed in the previous slides. Okay, so then I'm going to the next part of our talk today, which is basically the velum. And as you know, as I have told you probably, that that velum is somewhere around here, and it is basically the liver that decides whether the airflow should go out from the nose, or the vocal cord vibration should go out from the nose or from the mouth. When it goes out from the mouth, a, e, u, a, o, the air, it goes up, closes the nasal cavity, which is here. When a sound like ma is made, it goes down, and then this area is open, so that the sound basically goes out from the nose. If you look into a much more closer view, this is what it looks like. This is what the velum looks like. It raises or keeps lowering, so that it comes out, sounds come out from the nose, and or sounds come from the mouth. So oral sounds versus nasal sounds. So when you're pronouncing a b sound, this one is basically closed. When you're producing a m sound, it is basically open and it goes out from the nose. So now there are some recent advances that are made about how it actually works, what people have done is that they have taken MRIs of these, vocal, velum functioning. And what they have done is that they have tried to look into different sounds, how these different sounds are made by humans. They have taken the MRIs, magnetic resonance imaging, what you when somebody is not well, they take the MRI of the brain or different parts of the body. So these people have taken the MRIs when people are pronouncing this sound. So I'll show you some of these. This is not our work, but as you can see, this is a Glasgow, University of Glasgow's work here. If you look into the first one, this is what is happening in the production of an oral sound like the, right? So I'm trying to play this now. Let me see. I have to go back here. The. So I'll play it one more time, and you please pay attention to this area. The. The. So there are two things happening here. You can see the vocal cords are closed. Secondly, the velum is going up and releasing the air from the mouth because it's an oral sound. The next case is the case of the na sound, and here we have the na. So as a result of this, first is oral, should come out from the mouth. Na should come out from the nose. Na. So first one is the n. As you can see, the na. Again. As you can see, the n part, there is a closure here, but this is open, and so the air goes out from the nose, and that makes you hear the na sound that you hear in our languages. If you look into the ma, this is what happens here. In case of ma, exactly at the pronunciation of the ma sound, you can see that it basically lowers. Okay, so this is what is happening in case of oral and nasal sounds, and the oral and nasal sounds is basically determined by this area, which is called the velum. Okay, so now let's also look into what is happening when the normally that is how velum should work, and we produce all our pa, ba, ka, ta, da, na, ma, na, etc. But what happens when the velum does not work properly? When the velum doesn't work properly, this is something, a condition that we call the velopharyngeal insufficiency, or VPI. In velopharyngeal insufficiency, what happens is that the velum does not close the nasal airway, so the nose part still keeps open. And that is very common among, in the children in some areas of India. India has a large prevalence of this case, where children, when they are born with a little bit of the kind of velopharyngeal insufficiency due to different pathological conditions. Cleft lip is one of those kind of cases, and I'm giving you this example animation of, with no sound, of a normal child speaking, and oops, sorry, and so this is one with the velopharyngeal insufficiency. As you can see, the velum does not close, and then there is enough gap here, so that these people, when they speak, they sound like, when they say hello, how are you, they'll say how are you, that kind of things. And then this is basically caused because of the bad velum. So again, on the normal case, if you look into it, you'll see that this completely closes the air here, right? So these are real conditions, and these are real conditions that we see in our day-to-day life. And these are some of the things we need to analyze more and come up with methodologies to early detection, whether they should be, how much of insufficiency they have, whether it can be cured by some sort of training, or it needs surgical intervention. These are important questions that are needed to be asked, and for which we need to have good analysis, which we are hoping that the workshops like this will be able to enable you to do. Okay, so what The way of like looking into this vocal fold or vocal cord phenomena or velopharyngeal insufficiency velum phenomena is that we can go ahead and go and look at it directly, in the sense many cases the doctors, what they do is that they basically ask patients to stay still, and they lower a camera into this into your throat, and they try to see the image of the video image of it. Similarly, like for velopharyngeal insufficiency, also there is a nasal camera which goes inside, and then they see how the film is working. However, for most of the patients, because there are quite a lot of patients of these insufficiencies, it is not possible to have all of them go through it, because it's a very invasive process, right? Because it involves going inside your body and like observing a phenomena, so it's invasive, and it always needs medical supervision, plus it has its own risks. So as a result of that, what we are like, many of us who are working in this field these days, what we are thinking is that, another thing is that the expensive instruments that we have to all these cameras, etc., they're very expensive. Anyway, so coming back to the point that I was raising, so as a result of that, many of us who are working in the field now, what we basically are thinking is that, is it better to just go record from these people and see what is the difference we have between the normal people's speech characteristics and the pathological cases speech characteristics. So that is a much more non-invasive, less no risk involved, and of course much more less expensive method that we could have. So that brings me to the next part of the talk, where I'm going to talk about the basics of speech acoustics. When we are talking about speech, then what we basically see is some sort of representation like this. If you look into this particular image now, there are three major parts of it actually. One is that on the top we have the waveforms, which are on x-axis you have the time domain, y-axis you have the amplitude, and you can see how these amplitude changes over time as a person speaks. On the second one is what we call a spectrogram, and a spectrogram is a little bit, has one more detail, that it has the frequencies on the y-axis here, right? And it on the z-axis, or in the let's say in the colors here, it tells you what are the high intensity areas. For example, as you can see probably here, this area is very dark, so we know that somewhere at around 1200 hertz, the amplitude of that component or of that spectra is basically high. So similarly, if I go into this area, which is about 2000, let's say 200 hertz around here, it is much more lighter color. So we know that has a much more lower amplitude in that 2200 frequency. So basically, this combination of these frequencies, different frequencies, what you are hearing as ka, ka, pa, ta, a, e, u, e, u, all these differences are basically because of the unique signature of these frequencies having different amplitudes at different times as we speak. So the top one, as I said, I'll now play the sound. This is an Assamese sentence produced by one person. As you can see, it has a lot of variations of consonants and vowels. And as I said, sorry, the one on the top is called a waveform, has x-axis time, y-axis amplitude, spectrogram x-axis time, y-axis frequency, and z-axis, which is the color or the band, it is the amplitude. Okay, so. Uh, Okay, so somebody is not able to see anything. Is it the problem with?
I think network problem from their side. Yeah, this is visible.
Okay, okay. So now, as you can, as I have said, so this is what a waveform is, a spectrogram is, and on the bottom part we have these transcriptions. As you can see, what we have done is that we have made the boundaries for each consonant vowel here, each word in the second level, and the third level, each breath group, by which we mean like, one pulse of air within one pulse, within one like breath, how much can you how much the person has speak. So in between these areas which you have the gaps, the person is probably breathing for the next sentence. One interesting thing that I would like you to notice here, if you look into the spectrograms, you can see that the first bar is like, dark. Next, there is a like, uh, kind of lighter. There's a alternating dark bands and like, white bands in the spectrograms, which we call the striations. So it is not plain dark. It is like, one dark, then one blank, one dark, one blank, etc. And that is basically because of the vocal cord vibration pattern. Because when it is dark, that means the intensity is high, so the vocal cord must have been open and the airstream must have come. When it is closed, there is no intensity, so it creates the white striation, white vertical line here, right? So I think that is very interesting how the your physiological characteristics are being indicated in the spectrogram, in fact. Okay, so I'll go to the next slide. Sorry about that. Huh. So now, let's say like we have what we have seen so far is that like the speech uh, speech spectrogram and waveform. So if you look into the speech signal now, then what we can assume at this point of time is that speech signal basically is the basis of it is the source filter theory, which basically says that speech is nothing but the source characteristics, which I have shown you. The source is basically the vocal cord vibration, how your muscles have worked and what it has given out, and then the filter, which is basically the articulators uh, of your like which basically modifies the source. So the source is basically the larynx, this part, right? And the filter is the anything above larynx. So if we look into this now, this makes it clear. So this is the here is the larynx, here are the vocal cords up here, and this area where you make your mouth open, close, close your lips, close your velum, etc. All these things are your different filters, right? Different states of your filter, right? And which different states basically give out different sounds. For example, when I do ah, e, versus I do a sound where like the no, it comes out from the nose. All these are different filter characteristics, and along with the source vibration, it gives you the sound that you hear. Interestingly, we can go ahead, and what we can do is that, so we can assume here is that the speech that you hear of this person speaking, that this one is basically a combination of source and filter. Now, with some mathematical equations, what we can do is that we can basically remove this filter, and we can just listen to the source now. So when I like subtract the filter from the source, now I'm left with this. So what you're hearing here is that only this opening, closing of the vocal cords, but this part, above part, supralaryngeal part, which is the filter, is not what you hear anymore. So you cannot hear the consonant, vowels, or any of the other identities are all lost here. Only thing that you are hearing is basically the vocal cord vibration. Yeah, as somebody has indicated, it sounds funny, but that is how each of us are actually speaking if we did not have our head on. Okay, so I'll go to the next part. So what you heard is the source from vowels and voice sounds. So, for the voice sounds, basically, these are basically what is happening. What you heard is a some of the glottal pulses, What are the gall pulses? Because you open your vocal cord suddenly, kind of. So one pulse of air comes out, right? And these air pulses, they when you are putting it in quick succession, it sounds like what you have just heard. So what I tried to do is that I'll just quickly go to this one. What I tried to do is that I took one part of that signal that you have just heard, and I looked into each part of the opening and I separated them, and I made this particular video for you. So I when I separate each opening, this is what it sounds like. So you heard it. So it is nothing but some pops, right? So what you are doing actually, when what I am doing while speaking to you right now, is that making a series of pops. But these series of pops are so fast that for you, after filtering, it sounds like a completely different reality. But if I slow it down, super slow it down, then this is what speech is actually. So I will do it all these pops together. And if I do it like what it is in sound, then this is what it is. As you can see, by this small portion itself, you can now guess that this is ah, right? Okay, so now I'll go to the next part. So what is happening actually in the production of these different sounds is that assume that your vocal cords are somewhere here. The vocal cords are somewhere around in this area, right? And then we have our vocal tract here, which shaped like this. When you're making an ah, because your front of the mouth is open, it becomes a tube which is narrow at the back and wider in the front. So when you are making a kind of sound, then it becomes almost equal, almost uniform tube. When you are making an e, then what happens is that the front part becomes narrower and back part becomes bigger. And basically, these shape changes of the tube that you have from your larynx to your lips is basically giving you all the differences that you hear between a, e, u, e, o, all these different vowels, maybe 30, 40 vowels that we have in human languages, is because of the different configuration, different tube size, different shape of the vocal tract, right? And based on this, you must have seen this one quite a few times. This is what we come up with, that when you are making it narrow, then we see it close, open. This is also close, open, but is it the closeness is in the front or in the back, right? Based on that, we make a vowel, front vowel, back vowel, etc., etc. Okay, one more thing is that if it is that simple, that you take a tube and change the tube shape, and you just put, well, the vocal cords at the back, and then we produce speech, then it should be a replicable process. In fact, it is replicable, and it has been done for a long time, and I'll give you an example of this. This was done in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. What they have done is that the vocal cord vibration can be seen in many cases actually. For example, if you go to during the festival, they have this small, pepe, right now, where you blow and it makes a pam 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 sound. It sounds like somewhat like this, right? You can use this. They are there. You can use it as a source, right? Now has become a source, right? Now what we can do is that just following the pattern there, right? We can make some glass tubes, as you can see here, and then we can add this source one side of the glass tube, and we can try to see what sound we hear. For example, this one, when we do it, as you can see, it basically sounds like ah. This is the front, this is where you put your this source here. This one sounds more or less like e, and this one, as you can see, this process is actually very mathematical process, and that is why it is quantifiable. That is why we can measure it, and it can be reproduced also, as you have seen in these cases. So what is basically happening here is that the source is creating some sort of vibration, as you see in the light dispersion case here. Let's say we put a filter here, which is a, like, wall with some windows. What will happen is that some of the frequencies will come out, some of the frequencies will not come out, right? And that is exactly what is happening in speech, because speech, when we are producing a fundamental frequency with the vocal cord vibration, it not only gives out the vocal cord vibration, but it also creates the different harmonics which are two times the fundamental frequency, three times the fundamental frequency, up to infinity, theoretically, right? And these harmonics are being filtered by the mouth or by this shape, and the resulting resulting frequencies which come out are giving you the unique vowel signatures. So we can assume that it basically looks somewhat like this, that considering that this is y-axis is amplitude, x-axis is frequency, and these the first component is the fundamental frequency about 1100 hertz. You can see the second component has high amplitude, and it goes low for most of the others are basically filtered out by the shape of the mouth, and the 2200 2100 component is again filtered, and it gives, high amplitude. So you basically hear this and probably these in this particular example, right? And these peaks are basically called what we call the F1, F2, F1, F2, and F3, or formant 1, formant 2, and formant 3. Interestingly, this value of the F1 will depend on it's inversely proportionate to the height of the tongue in your when you produce speech. The F2 is inversely proportionate to the backness, right? The more front you, to the frontness, more front you go. No, I'm sorry. It is directly proportionate to frontness. The more front you go, F2 will be higher. More less front you are, the F2 will be lower. And then F3 is about, the roundness of the lips. For example, if you make an oo where your lips become round, F3 will be lower. If you make a when your lips are not round, F3 will be lower. So basically, when you're making oo, the total length of the vocal tract increases, and that induces a lower F3. And that is how you get a, e, u, e, o, all these different vowel characteristics summarized in only these properties, which is F1, F2, and F3. Okay, so this is the fundamental of speech, and then the a little bit about acoustics. Let's now go into the idea of the pathological speech out of this. So out of this, what we understand is that if the speech is disrupted due to the neural control, then this is a phenomena called dysarthria. It results in disfluent speech, irregular speech rates, and sometimes like monotonic or robotic kind of speech. And then in many cases, then they are under articulated phonemes, so the sounds are not produced properly. In terms of acoustic properties, if you look into the dysartic speech, they're disfluent, they have slower rate. If it is monotonic speech, then the fundamental frequency, because when I'm talking to you, my fundamental frequency keeps on rising, rising, dropping, etc. So the monotonic speech would have no difference, so it will be less fundamental frequency variation. And as I have said, the vowel formants will not be, what I have shown you just now, will not be properly maintained. In case of dysphonia, which is the weak due to weak vocal muscles, it might result in a hoarse voice if somebody talks like, "Hello, how are you?" And this is a kind of hoarse voice. You can see that the vocal chord controls are not very good, which happens in old age and in many other neurological or pathological conditions. So this one is a case of dysphonia. Becomes breathy. Sometimes it becomes like the opposite. It sounds like the person is giving too much effort in production of sounds. So this is also part of dysphonia. And if you look into trying to relate it back to what we have studied, what we can see is that these kind of dysphonic speech, we can estimate it by measuring the fundamental frequencies at different points and see if it is fundamental frequencies are differing or not differing. Increased jitter and shimmer, for example, in an ideal voice, we would assume that one waveform cycle and the other waveform cycle, the in terms would be of the same duration, right? At least, they're quasi periodic, so they're almost the same duration. But if it varies too much, so then what happens is that the jitter basically is affected. So jitter value is affected. So we know that in such cases the jitter will be increased. The shimmer is basically for each of the waveform that you have seen in the previous slides. How much is the amplitude? If the amplitude variation is too much, then we know that that the shimmer value basically increases, and shimmer value increases is increasing is a indication of the dysphonic speech. There are some other values, but this is not part of our talk today, so I'm going to um, avoid this. So there are some limitations of these features also. They are not quite absolute, but they're kind of relative. And sensitivity to the noise in the speech is also something that has to be taken care of. Okay, I'm gonna skip some part of it now because of time, and I just want to go out to show you how what we do in case of speech data collection. So in our speech data collection, what we are doing is that we take a unidirectional closed talk mic, and we set the mic about 2.5 centimeter from the lips. We take solid state recorders and in the quiet kind of environment, and this is our usual setup for collecting data. And then for us, in order to capture all the variations that we have talked about, we basically use some standard materials such as the standard test batteries, some standard passages, spontaneous speech, reading passages, sentences contrasting in target phonemes such as pa versus ba, etc. These kind of data that we basically collect in our research. Apart from that, what is happening is that in order to get these vocal cord vibrations properly, what we are doing is that we are also using something called the electroglottograph. Basically, what happens is that, as you see in the picture, there are two electrodes here. One electrode sends an electrical impulse, the other captures it. So if the vocal cords are connected, if they're closed, then there is a full circuit, and then you see a high electric potential. If it is not connected, when the vocal cords are not vibrating, then basically it breaks. So we can see a pattern which basically shows the electricity conductivity pattern of the through the vocal cords, which gives us uh, something like this. So this is when vocal cords are open, they are not closed, and when they're open, the electric potential goes to the highest, then it becomes lowest when it is open, and so on and so forth. So in these cases, what we are estimating is that this is the when the vocal cords are coming together. So what we are doing is that we are calculating how much portion of this is closed portion, which is the blue part that you can see, and how much portion of the voice is the open portion. That is what we are from which we can get the idea whether something is normal voice or not normal voice. As you can see, the first one is a normal voice, is pretty periodic, and the opening and closing and the electric potential are more or less uniform. But if you look at the second case, which is a pathological case, the person has a small tumor polyp in the vocal cord. As you can see, this amplitude is not quite uniform, and the waves are not as uniform as this. Here also, like, in the third case, dysphonia, you can see the amplitudes and even the timing is not matching. So these basically give us the idea whether a voice is normal or not normal. Okay. So the other type of for VLAM activity, other type of measurement that we are doing is something called a nasometer. So this is basically a microphone which has an oral mic and a nasal mic, and the oral and the nasal part is basically, as you can see here, is disconnected by a plate here. There is a mic here, right? And what we do is that we try to basically get the difference. This is the from what we get from the nose, this is from the mouth in the production of the ma sound. And what we do is that we try to get the nasalence value, which is the energy of the nasal mic in comparison to the entire energy of the both channels, which is the oral and nasal channel. And we try to determine whether the person has more than required amount of nasality, which will tell us about hypernasality, or like that his or her phylum is not working very well. Okay, so coming down to the one of the last parts now. So there are many challenges in such a kind of works. One is that we when we are collecting data or when we are analyzing, we have to look into the dialects of languages, speakers, sessions, etc. Having continuous data, recording data is also something very difficult. And another big problem is that if you look into India, there are so many different languages in India. So one language's characteristics is not very different from the other languages characteristics. So one of the things many of us are trying to do is that we are trying to do these kind of studies with speech from different languages in the world, in India, and we are trying to find out the normative values. What is the normal value of the vocal cord vibration of, let's say, characteristics of nasal sounds, etc., and trying to create a baseline for different Indian languages, so that we can create, we can find out, we can check the pathological patients along this, compared to this normal people's data, and find out how severe their problem is. So as a result of that, what happens is that what we come to know is that for many Indian languages also, we actually don't know what are the consonants and the vowels. So this is something that we need to look into in future, and first determine the languages, consonants and vowels, using the tools that we have discussed here. Also, there are many devices, including microphones, which may not be designed to capture the unique features of Indian languages, in fact. So this is something, a different talk at some point of time that I can give. But today, I would just stop with these challenges, and future direction could be doing really ground level fundamental work for Indian knowledge, and build up our signal processing and quantitative analysis based on those works. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So now I'll go for the to the audience. If you have any queries, any information you need, you can unmute yourself and ask Priyankoo sir and the questions. She is ready to answer. And any one of you want to contact to Priyankoo sir, definitely you can contact directly. You can find him in IIT Guwahati site, or you can also contact to me so that I can pass the information to him. Yes, Abba was it. Yeah. Yes, Abba. You can
Uh,
unmute.
okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Abba Bashir from Nigeria. In Nigeria, it's morning now, so that's why I said good morning. I was 3 years ago. I was gold medalist for the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav quiz organized by the High Commission India in Abuja. So thank you very much, sir, for the presentation. It was really educative and I learned a lot. So my question is, sometimes though being in the health field, my question is sometimes I see patients that have tracheostomy tube, and that tracheostomy tube bypasses the vocal cords because it is put below the position of the vocal cords. So is there any way which they can be made to speak? And if we want to monitor their waveforms or there's one graph that you showed, is it possible to do that in those people? Thank you.
Um, so you're talking about like tracheotomy or the laryngectomy, right? So when the vocal cords are basically removed, or is it like when they are like they put it for some medical purposes, they put the pipe there. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, mainly tracheostomy tube
Okay.
for people that have airway obstruction and it's
Okay,
being
yeah,
put.
yeah, got it. Yeah, so like so it can be a long term and short term also. Short term is not a problem, as you know, because at some point of time it is going to come up. But you know that like there can be long term, and for those people, actually, there is a group of people who have been working on this in Japan. So if you look into like the works of the Professor Takayuki Arai, their group has been working on this like specifically with people for which had laryngectomy basically due to cancer and other reasons. They have been trying to create some devices, but I am not directly working on this, so I may not be qualified to talk about this. But if you look up Professor Arai's work, Takayuki Arai, and I can send you the information later also, then they are doing that such kind of works. But
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
my point is that it is not that nobody is working on this. This is a recognized problem and people are working on this.
Okay, thank you. Please, I would like to have the work of
Yeah,
Prof. Arai.
yeah. So I will just quickly write down my email here so that somebody, if they need, then you
Yes, sir.
can.
Yes, sir. In group also I can write down.
Oh yeah, yeah, that is better actually.
WhatsApp
So
group is there. I have
uh,
created, so I have your
yeah,
mail
but
ID.
I prefer this one, gmail.com. So I have sent it to everyone in the message. Okay. So
Yes,
is
yes,
there any other question that I can take?
yes. Any other questions? You can unmute yourself. You can ask. Otherwise, you will stop here.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, as a beginner, how can I work on this?
On which?
Uh, Speech processing. I want to work on a field on the speech processing. I don't know how to start as a beginner.
Okay.
I'm
So
just asking the roadmap.
can you tell me your background, please?
Sir, I am a second year student currently studying in KT University. I am studying AIML right now on my own in this summer vacation.
BTech in AML.
BTech in AI. Yeah, so that's a very interesting area. Number one, number two, like as you know, probably that there is a huge amount of like work that is going on in AI/ML plus speech, like all around the world. And I think like as you have already participated in this workshop, so you are in the right place. This is how you basically begin, and you attend these, get ideas, do a project initially on one of the issues. Maybe if you are in Orissa now, then you can look into like many of the like Orissa government is very proactive about like recognizing these smaller languages in Orissa. So you can like look into these smaller languages and see what you can, how you can start uh, analyzing these languages, number one, and also building some small technologies for these languages. So they should go hand in hand. And you are welcome to come to us and then work in our lab. I mean, I invite all of you to come to our campus and see the campus and see what we are doing. So the first point is that as you already have the calling that, you want to work on speech, possibly it is a good idea first to get the fundamentals right by attending workshops, particular specific classes. If you want, I can also help you in identifying some specific classes, and then work on a small project, and then find out your, identify your language which you think, you should work on.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I mean, I told that we have KISS universities there, so a lot of low resource languages are available, indigenous language. So we
Right.
can collect the data and summarizing, suppose 1 hour speech, we can summarize into 5 or 10 minutes. So how many data, minimum data is required? So you can come sometime to me. I don't have so much idea on speech, but definitely all those colleagues are there with me. So I also can help you if you want.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir. Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So hello everyone. My name is Isa. I'm from Chad, and just like Satya sir has said, there are many low resources languages and everything, and like especially in Africa, we have so much of low resources languages and everything. For instance, in my country, like we have like 180 something languages, that too for just 20 million people. And I would like to work on these languages. So since they are very low resources languages and everything, so it is very hard for me to get the data. And I would like to know any approach that you can recommend on like how to collect the data and how to process it and kind of things.
Yeah. So for I mean, there are two ways of looking into it. If the data, if the language is written, or if the language is not written at all. If the language is written and if there is some resource already available, for example, many of the low resource languages, we already have some religious materials, bibles, etc., available in those languages, and that can be a very good resource that you, take those texts and build a small web app, let's say, the web app which records the speech, and you distribute those sentences across people, and then get the speech from the web app. Now what you have is that you have a parallel text and parallel speech, right? And with that, you can begin some sort of the work on the languages. But it is, as I said, it is very important to first find out what the language, what are the characteristics of the languages. You have to very confirm first, if there is any work which has conclusively said how many consonants, how many vowels, how many tones are there in the languages. Because African languages have consonants, vowels heavy, consonant heavy, also tone heavy, right? So all these things, when they are confirmed, then you should go for the data collection and technology building. Now, if you see that one part of it, let's say vowel, tones, or consonants, is not clear, then I suggest that as a beginner, you should contribute to the community by doing a good study of the vowels and tones and the consonants of the language, and then go for technology building, because that will give you a huge advantage. So technology always fails because specifically speech technology, because we don't if we don't know about the language, it will not work. If we have very good idea about the language, how it is structured, how many syllables a word can have, what type of syllables, etc., all these things are detailed, then technology building much more easier and more effective. uh, so my suggestion is this, identify if there are any resources. If you tell me If we can, you want to have a discussion later, I would be very happy to have a discussion online and see what kind of resources we have.
All right, sir. Thank you for your
Yeah.
suggestions. I would like to like, what about the languages are not written? Because many of our languages are not written.
Yeah, that is absolutely possible. Now, not written. Also, many people. So you mean that there is absolutely zero resource, not even a religious material, not a Bible, etc. Is that what it is?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's
In
like,
that case,
Mhm.
yeah, I got the point. Yeah. So in that case, it has to be like, you have to use some sort of phoneme representation, some sort of romanization you have to use yourself so that it can be like recorded. Else, it is almost near impossible to create such technologies. You just cannot go ahead with only speech to speech with low resource.
All right, sir. I think, yeah, many of our languages we can like write them in like Latin alphabet, like ABC, this kind of thing. So I think that would be a
Yeah.
great.
Can you tell me what is the for example, what is the language that you're thinking of, and what is the language that is there, for example?
For example, there is a language like Wadayan language is like called Wadai, and like there are many things like many languages, but I'm targeting the main ones. If I could, do some work on these kind of languages.
Okay, and what is the majority language in that area?
So there is like a Chadian Arabic. It's
Oh, yeah.
based on Arabic language. This one
Yeah.
is the most popular one. So it is like similar to like Arabic, but it is not the same.
Yeah. Bashir has a suggestion for you to write down the name on the text box so that everybody can get the
All right.
knowledge. Yeah, Isa, thanks a lot for the very nice question. And then I would really like to talk to you later. So if you want, please feel free to email me.
All right, sir. I will definitely going to contact you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Uh,
We'll take or will.
sir,
Yes,
Yeah.
Shanai.
yes. Uh, Good afternoon, sir. So my name is Sanay. I'm a third year BTech CSC student from KIT. And sir, I did a bit of NLP in my last semester. And I wanted to ask, sir, what is a good way to build familiarity and intuition regarding this uh, big field? Because there is it is a big field and there is a lot of things to learn. And what is a good way to start, and what are some mistakes that we should avoid while learning the subject? What are some rabbit holes that we should avoid? And just what's a good starter kit to have?
Yeah, so that's what I've been trying to say, that see, I think only technology would never give you you'll have a lot of rabbit holes if you have only technology, right?
Yes, sir.
So that fundamental understanding about the language, its structure, its sound system has to be there. Like if it is not available, at least with your intuitions, you should try to get some understanding of those kind of features of the language. Until and unless you have that blind building of technology is absolutely not something it is two things. It is not effective. Secondly, it is not respectful, right?
Right. So what's
Yeah, I
a
mean,
good way to go about it? Like, if I want to build my intuition properly and truly understand the essence of this, then what's a good way to go about it?
yeah,
I actually also recently did a project regarding this where I did all the things like it was a whole pipeline which did audio loading, beat detection, and key detection, and then it was a music based app. So I did all of those things, but I still feel like I still do not really link well with the next step. Like I don't truly have a very good direction on what to do and how to go about it. So what's a good way to learn those things so I can really grasp the essence of it and how to go about complex problems?
Sana,
Yeah.
I'm interrupting. So, see, I think Priyanku sir will give definitely a good suggestion, but lots of technical persons are going to be joined in the coming sessions. Sir, am I right, sir, Priyanku sir?
So
Like
Yeah.
Jagabandhu is there, then your Murli is there.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I think
but maybe I'll just well, like give one line of like about intuition, because you have asked about intuition. So intuition is actually two things that intuition comes from. One is that your readings, and secondly your experience, right?
yes,
So
sir.
I think you have to see which one you are. For example, my intuition about the northeastern languages comes from the fact that I have grown up in this area, so I have some sort of intuition about these languages. And second, whatever lack I had was because of the linguistic texts that I studied that filled up my gap. So these two are
Right.
very these two are the things, like people have forgotten studying, that is the or reading, that I think has resulted in dependence on chat gpt's intelligence and intuitions more than the human intelligence and intuition.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. So for
Okay.
my my friends from Africa, so I just want to tell you that one of the first languages that I worked on actually is a language called Songhai Chini, which is spoken in Niger. And then I absolutely was like amazed to work on that particular language, and I still thank my professor for introducing the Songhai Chini language to me.
lots of languages are there. I have already worked. I think some definitely on some conference paper around 8 to 9 African languages. But in all the papers, those particular community students are there with me because I don't know anything. Only thing is
Right, right, right.
nothing. So definitely the particular community people is required and students are required.
Right.
So definitely, I will also contact you too, because as I told you, we have a good resource to have a good repository, speech repository. So we need your help definitely to create that one. Then with the collaboration of others, we'll think something
Right.
project or publication like that. Okay, then I have already shared your mail ID to all. So anyone wants to contact to Priyanku sir directly can contact. No problem.
Yeah, I would like to thank all the participants for such good participation, and it's like it's a very friendly crowd. I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Very much. Thank you very much, sir. I'll contact with you. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.